the vast majority of people, work is directly tied to paying their bills. It's difficult for most people, if not impossible, for them to separate that, because if they don't work, they can't pay their rent.
For the person who lives their life and the work they do is just to pay bills, how can they escape the cycle?
Yeah.
Few things hit home, like when Dr. David Wachira anaingia zone ya kuexplain story ya pesa.
For a lot of people, it's unfortunate that they may not be able to get out of that cycle of poverty for a variety of reasons. One,
our guest for this episode, Dr. David Wachira, is a public finance and economics specialist.
Yeah, you can exist outside the system of debt.
And create wealth.
And create wealth. But there will have to be a number of things that would have to go right. One.
And a friend of the show who never misses something that will challenge your belief about how the money system works.
I buy everything with a credit card. Okay, I don't use, even when I use M-Pesa or whatever, at least on the US side, I can't. Now, I will only use M-Pesa when I can't physically swipe my card. A place ambayo hawana PDQ. Okay. Why? Two main reasons. The first one.
Alafu, wouldn't it be interesting to hear Dr. Wachira's thoughts on the idea of the spiritual connection to money?
Witchcraft?
Someone is poor because they've been bewitched. I'm your host, Dr. Kingori, and here's another reason to stay subscribed to our channel. Come out, just subscribe. This right here is another good reason to hit subscribe and turn on the notifications bell.
But now, if you're ever in need of an office space, please Poa inaweza bring out the best in you as far as creativity is concerned, as far as productivity is concerned. Hautaki kwenda kwa hustle ya kuhire space, sijui kurent, ulipe goodwill and hizo vitu zote. You need to consider checking out Odoo. Odoo is a premium co-working space located in Upper Hill, Nairobi, Makio Hotel, formerly Crown Plaza. Wako na anything you'll ever need in an office and so much more. I'm talking about a gym. Hautawai worry about parking, swimming pool, bottomless coffee, beautifully furnished spaces including private offices and meeting room. Wi-Fi is super fast and the list is endless. You can get in touch with the team at Odoo kutumia hizi contact details mweke hapa kwa screen.
Karibu sana maze. We've been planning this for some time. Always a pleasure to engage you in conversation about money. So I am prepared with a submission, an interesting thing I saw. I didn't send this to you, so I'd just like to hear what you think. It's a picture I came across in the form of a meme. Yeah, you must break rules to make money. The system is designed to make us poor. How true is this statement, if in your experience?
Well, it depends on whether we're talking about breaking rules, legal or otherwise. But I think maybe rather than using the term break rules, I would probably prefer more, less aggressive term like break the mold in terms of making money. Because I think rules, particularly governed rules, I think the legal ones are there to be followed by a vast majority of people, and we should respect those. And I wouldn't go as far as to say that there was an intentionality in the designing of rules to keep people poor. I think that would be a tall stretch. In certain countries, yes, but in free democracies, in capitalist societies, I wouldn't say go as far, because the economy is too complex for one person or an oligarchy or even a group of people to have their hands on. It doesn't mean that they can't influence. People like Elon Musk can influence, but it's a different thing entirely to say that they control the economy. Even if you get 10 Elon Musks, it's just
I believe they do.
Yeah, I wouldn't say control. I would definitely say influence. They have very strong influence on the economy. Borrowing, they're able to set the interest rates. They have favors they can call in, that you and I can't. Okay, and so maybe the rules are not necessarily designed for them, because when you and I more than likely are not able to call our own interest rates. So I can't call a bank and say, I want a loan of 5 billion at 4%. Okay. Someone like Musk or, other billionaires in Kenya may be able to do so, largely because of access, but also because of what that money is bringing to the entity. So it's not just like these people are just bending over backwards to provide these unreasonable sums of money at a very low rate. I think the bank is still in the business of making money, but if somebody is borrowing 50 billion at like even 4%, that's a significant amount compared to you and I 30,000 at 17% when we're talking about raw dollars or raw shillings. So do they control the economy? I personally wouldn't go as far as to say that there is an inherent, innately designed system out there that is just there to keep, people from growing rich or from growing wealthy. But I don't think people are equal.
I'll submit. I'll counter that with, in a capitalist system, I'm inclined to believe now that for someone to have, someone else must lack. Right? Because
it would make that argument if money is fungible in of itself, in that you can exchange it for one thing. So this dollar and this dollar are equal and they can be treated. But I don't think there's the law of diminishing returns applies here. Is that if I take from this particular one, it means that it's like what do you call the scale that ukichukua hapa, this other one will go up in terms of, because there's not a finite amount of resources. So we can't say this is very different.
There is. Because there's a finite amount of resources.
Natural resources, yes, but not money, because it's a figment. It's a made up thing. We can, if there was a finite aspect, governments wouldn't be able to deficit spend.
You know why? You know why I say that? You know why I introduced the concept of someone must lose for someone else to get. When you think about the ideas at work, the most successful business strategies that we have seen, right? The most interesting are those that create artificial demand, right? And then after creating the artificial demand, when the uptake has gone nini high, some people have made money, people bail out, and then that's done. And there's a quote that says, when you want to participate in a game, a rigged game, make sure that it is you who has rigged it in your favor.
Yeah.
And I think that perfectly describes the money system.
So maybe I would agree with you some aspects, but for me personally, both personal and professional opinion, I think it would be a tall stretch to make the assumption that everything is rigged and there is a finite aspect. Now, I will admit that there are people with an unreasonable amount of power and influence on the economy, and they use the economy wittingly in their favor at the expense of others. Okay, but that's not a modern aspect. That's something as old as the age of time. It's an unfortunate aspect of humanity, and that's why you'll get the philosophers saying it's a brutish, doggish, eat dog world out there, and that's why the system of laws and institutions come into play to a large extent. It doesn't mean that people will not revert back to their innate desire for selfishness and self-preservation, and that influences these problems that we're seeing now. Using that aspect, is there artificial demand? Yes. Can I give you a very good example? Tesla. Okay, and maybe even other people would argue Bitcoin, and I would be on that aspect. Artificially instigated systems that prop up some aspects of the rich, but then what you end up having is a lot of people who don't understand the system, getting in on a very speculative aspect. So let's take this one by one. Let's use Tesla. Okay, Tesla is $1 trillion company. Okay, I don't know the numbers right now in terms of how many cars they make. Okay, but Toyota, the largest car company in the world, think of how many brands they make. From the Corollas to everything. I mean, literally dozens and dozens of brands. Okay, Tesla does not sell more cars than just Corollas. And you think there's a Corolla, there's Prado, there's all these other ones.
Yes.
Tesla is just...
Tesla does not even outsell the Corollas.
Just the Corolla. Okay, but they are worth almost double the price of Toyota. Okay, in a more recent aspect. Why? Not because of assets. If you take a look at the financial statements and the financial seats of the top 20 companies, and you see Tesla up there, and you actually the valuations are tied to something. There's speculation, but they're tied to something. In that if this company is about to go bankrupt, or their valuation more or less equals their assets in terms of physical assets, intellectual property assets, and you can put numbers to this. But if you take a look at Tesla, its valuation is not so much on the assets, but on the stock price, which is driven by perception, okay? Which is why the stock price will get to $1,000. They'll do a stock split, goes back down, and then continues to increase aspects. So Elon Musk, I'm not saying that he's not a smart person, he's a brilliant person for orchestrating this, but he's the richest person in the world, not necessarily because he's producing something whose assets equal to that valuation that we have ascertained for Tesla, but largely because a lot of people with Robinhood, Webull, and other aspects are able to, essentially gamble on Tesla's stock price going high. One good example is on November 4th, after the election in the US, Tesla prices skyrocketed. If you take a look at Tesla's price over the last month, it's amazing, the trajectory. Now, that trajectory is largely unreasonable, but why are people speculating that Tesla will increase so much? It's because, he has
Elon Musk President Trump.
The president. He's going to be put on this new department for government accountability and efficiency, and so forth. So there's a lot of assumptions that come in there. Of course, he's closer to the seat of power. Tesla is going to increase, and so you get a lot of speculation. It's very different from what would be happening in Toyota. Yes, did stock prices increase for a lot of companies after the election? Yes, but they increased because there was more stability in the outcome, and we're done with these aspects, and at least we know which fiscal policy is coming, whether it's Biden's or it's Trump's. But beyond that, there wasn't 20, 30, 40% jumps, okay? And then if you look at it over the course of the year. But if you were to take a look at Toyota, its valuation makes sense from a balance sheet, okay? Like, they make this output, this is what they sold, this is their assets. It makes a lot of financial sense, not so much on the speculation, but if you compare it to Tesla, a significant amount of speculation. Now, is that wrong? I wouldn't go as far to say, but it's unfortunately what we have designed in the capitalist system. If people think something has a significant worth to them, and there's a shortage of it when it comes to supply, whether artificial or physical, it's going to prop up the price. And that can happen in random things. Sugar, that's why our Kenyan military was running illegal sugar trades in Somalia and in other places. You can artificially inflate the value of something if you're in the seat of power. So going back full circle to what you're saying, do a lot of people have preferred rails into the system? Yes. Would I say that as a result, the whole entire system just is divided across the people who have the preferred rails and people who do not? I would say it's weighted unfavorably towards those who do not, but I wouldn't go as far as saying that they're excluded from aspect, because if they were, I wouldn't be in the situation where I'm in, because a large part of it has come from a system that rewards certain outputs.
Okay. Well, the military sugar thing, was that confirmed?
Well, we're speculating, right? Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
well, allegedly, let's use the word allegedly.
Yes, we have to make that clear. Watu wanaweza amua kufikiria ati tunasema from a point of confirmation. Wadau, leo nataka munikubalie kidogo tu niwademonstratie how important it is to streamline your business. Picture this scenario. Uko na stock kwa warehouse na then your office is elsewhere. Mse wako wa inventory pale kwa warehouse akona software yake ya kutake stock. Wewe kwa ofisi yako uko na software ya accounting na sales. 3 different softwares. Pay attention. Ama niseme kama Pastor Nganga. Pay attention. Sasa mse wa inventory amwe kufanya ile kitu. Akuweke bidhaa zingine fiti, lakini kwa software ya inventory pale kwa warehouse ajaze records kivyake. We pande yako kwa software yako ya accounting na sales umepiga numbers, lakini ukipiga stock tick mambo haziada hapo. Wadau, Odoo will help you streamline your business kwa platform moja. Odoo ni platform moja powerful sana that will centralize all your business. See, with Odoo, you have all the apps you need to manage your business and they are all interconnected. As in, on Odoo, your inventory management fills in the details on the inventory app that automatically communicates with your sales and accounting apps with correct details, na ina happen real time, by the way. Ikiingizwa imeingia kwa hizo apps zingine zote. Now this is alongside everything else from HR, purchases, CRM, and so much more at a very affordable price. It's a no-brainer mazi. Tumekuwekea link hapa kwa description ya hii video on how to get started. Take time and book a meeting with an Odoo expert. It's free and you get to choose your own date and time. The expert will take you step by step in transforming your business. Ama uanze na your first app on Odoo, which is free. Kitu kama website. It's so simple manze. No technical skills required. Just drag and drop blocks and customize to your liking. In 2025, usikubali kupoteza stock. Accountability ni kitu ya maana sana. Weka biashara yako yote place moja. Odoo. So with the knowledge that you have, right, okay, so with the perfect example of Tesla compared to Toyota, right? From that example, would you rather play would you advise someone to play the perception game? Because there seems to be a lot of money in perception when you master it. So should you master perception or should you stick to the asset old school game?
No, I think you should understand the risks. I mean, myself and a lot of my friends during the COVID crisis, or when the stock market was crazy, we made a significant amount of money trading, but we also understood the risks. Now, we were also not trading our rent. Okay, we were trading things. We understood that we were speculating, but it was informed speculation, and also taking advantage of the way the system was, in terms of, and I'm talking about this around March 10th, 2020, when everything really shut down. What happened to the stock market? I mean, it literally tanked overnight. They had to put the circuit breakers to keep people from trading. What did we do? At least a few of us, close to my friends and others, that's when we doubled down on our stock assets. And for me, just my own portfolio I was focusing on blue chip stocks. So I was buying stocks in companies that had a very long history of performance. So Apple. So the most amount of money I ever made from a stock trade was on Apple. Because
the most amount of money. Are you comfortable giving us the numbers just for context, to understand?
Sure, yeah.
An example, yes.
Yeah, I mean, about $87,000 US from Apple stock trades.
That's in profit.
Yeah. No. In profit will probably be about 40 to 50% of that. Yeah. So about, I would say maybe 45,000 in profit from sales over the course of, I would say 3 to 4 weeks.
So as a kienyeji person, the prediction is you're looking at COVID has happened, right? Immediately. You don't wait to know like what the situation is. You speculate that something is, as in this is an opportunity, right? Yeah. So you have, let's say like 40 to 45. Let's say you have 4 million Kenya shillings like somewhere. That's around $35,000, right? Around that time. So you have $35,000.
That's roughly what I had actually.
Sindio?
Yeah.
Around 4 million bob, okay? Then you stake this, and then in 2 weeks, you've doubled it. In 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So you have an extra 4 million that you did not have.
Yeah. Now, I would say it wasn't a buy and hold strategy for 2 weeks. It was a day trading strategy. I was probably doing 30, 40 Apple trades per day. Some as small as 30 seconds.
Oh,
so
you were there.
I was actively, we were at home. There was nothing else to do. So you would just wake up in the morning, read how the Nikkei is doing, how are the Asian stocks doing. You get all this information well before they open. Also, now you talk about access. Most people trade during the stock market hours in the US, which are 9:30 to 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Now, what we would do is that we would sign up to aftermarket and before market trading. And now they even have 24-hour trading. So I would read the news, figure out which way the wind was blowing, make the assumption that, Apple is going to go up. One, either they made an announcement or things have started to cool down. And then enter the market before it opens, buy like probably 300 shares worth of Apple, maybe about $140 a share, buy them, sell them 30 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes later, and then rinse and repeat. It was very good the first 2 weeks, and then after that things cooled down. And then now you're just probably doing that. Yeah, cash out, or it's that now you go back to the buy and hold strategy. Now, for me, just as an example, because I don't want anybody to do this, I wouldn't advise anyone to do this. Day trading is not worth the risks. For people who don't understand, I'll have the time to significantly spend time doing this. And I don't day trade anymore. I only day traded because everything was closed. I don't have the time to actually sit there and follow stocks on a daily basis. Now I go back to the more tried and tested strategy of buy stocks, hold, because the goal of any investment, you have to ascertain for yourself what it is that you want to do. Are you buying for the long term? Are you just parking money for a short while? And if you're parking money for a short while, for the average person, the stock market is not where you would park it. Mutual funds, bonds would be probably CDs, better places to park it. But if you have $4,000 or $5,000 and you have the time to speculate, informed speculation, I'm not talking about like rolling a die, then you can do so. Now, the reason why I was doing blue chip is because, yeah, I made wrong guesses as well. Okay, but the reason why I was doing blue chips is because they were recoverable. Apple is not going anywhere. So sometimes I would make a mistake and hold the stock for like 3 months. But if that was rent money, I wouldn't be able to do that. So I was only trading with funds that I could afford to hold, even if it's 4 or 5 years. They're there. So you first have to remove your emotions from it. And it also depends on the investment strategy. For the vast majority of people, I would say speak to investment expert, buy stocks, probably in mutual funds or indices, be patient. And I would not encourage anyone to day trade.
So even after testing such high returns in a span of 2 weeks, such high returns, you just go back to the system that works just because you're scared? You're scared
no, not because I'm scared. It's, you also, the song, you gotta know when to fold, know when to hold them. It was an informed decision to stock trade at that particular time, based on how the winds of change were coming. There was a lot of speculation on there. So what are a few things we know, okay? The assumption was it was an end of the world gloom, a life-changing event. And indeed it was for a variety of people and for even tons and tons of countries. Kenya ourselves, we were on lockdown, curfews, things we had never heard of. We completely shut down the aspect. So people did not know what was going to happen. But it wasn't, for me, it wasn't, we were going to get out of this and things were more or less going to go back to normal. So as a result, when we were buying Boeing or when we were buying airline stocks, we knew that we would get back to a time where people will fly again. So if you're buying American Airlines at $6 because they have shut down operations, a time will come where American Airlines may go back to $18 or $24. And if you have the buy and hold strategy, then that time will come. And that's what we did. Bought Boeing, bought some ExxonMobil stock. I even bought Volkswagen during the Dieselgate aspect, where, what do you say, they never let a good crisis go to waste. So
never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah, go to waste. So, and for us, at least for me and some of my friends, we really make most of our investments during periods of turmoil and during periods of crisis.
This is I think the second or third time you're mentioning your friends. So how, I want to go into speculation, but I'm like, how do you choose your friends? Like, how do you find yourself in a clique of people with common goals, people you do things, especially about money together?
Yeah, well, my dad says, do not let your friends choose you, choose your friends. For me, it's easy. I mean, you're my friend. It's friendship, for me at least, particularly close friendship, not associate.
There's a difference between close friends and associates.
And associates, and you can think of like, you know, what do you call, you know, the pools of water as they expand out. You know, the inner circle is very close and otherwise.
Yes.
So, and you know, I put my friends in compartments, not just because of the value they add to my life, but the value I add to their life. It's a reciprocal relationship. If someone is not adding value to your life, you really probably shouldn't be making that investment. And I'm not talking about...
And how do you separate that from being transactional? Maybe we define friendship the wrong way, as in in general. As African.
It's not transactional. So, okay, so you're my friend. If you call me tomorrow and you're gonna shida, and I can tell it's, at least where we are, it's not opportunistic. Because you can easily weed out phone numbers that ring and you know that they're just calling because, you know, wakona shida, nimekufikiria, and you're waiting for the small talk so they can really get to
why
they're calling. So those are more associates. They're people who you
know of each other.
You know of each other, but you wouldn't necessarily have a relationship. So, and friendship is transactional, not transactional in the way that you think in terms of an exchange of favors. Give me, I give this. But it is transactional. Is that, I mean, what does the Bible say about friendship? You know, a friend is born for adversity, okay, not the good times, okay? So if you're just having friends who are just there when things are going well, those are not friends. Those are people who, they're swinging doors. They're just coming out of your life and don't necessarily add any value. But for me, true friends are in periods of adversity. Theirs or mine, in terms of it, because we won't all be happy at the same time. Thankfully, on average, we'll be happy for the most of the time. But, you know, ukiwa na shida, the Bible says, don't tell your neighbor to go and come back tomorrow when you have it today. If it's in my ability to help you, I will help you. Not because I expect you to do the same when I'm in that particular situation. I'm simply doing it from a sense of duty and responsibility. Otherwise, why are we friends?
Okay, and then in terms of, is this where compartmenting of friends come in? Like, I have friends who we will invest with. Like, we have long-term goals pamoja, and it's exclusively that, such that probably you have meetings specifically for that. You have friends who you can just hang out with, and there's a limit to the exchange between you and the energy that comes between of you. Does this set, you said something very, very interesting. Don't let your friends choose you. So what's the value of that level of deliberateness?
I think for me, I mean, I'll go back to, you know, my particular upbringing on spiritual faith. You know, the Bible says, you know, bad company spoils good character. And that's something that was, you know, drummed in me, you know, do not be mocked. I can't just sit there and you're doing bad things. I'm excusing your murdering lifestyle or your thieving lifestyle. And I'm saying, we're friends, at least I'm not thieving. But, you know, eventually it's going to cloud even perception of how other people view me. By the way, you know, Dr. Kingori, Sikuizia. I'm very careful of that in terms of at least perception from, I don't want to use the word evil, but from a character perspective.
Yes.
And from the friends aspect, for me, and maybe the wrong word would be compartmentalized, but I do that because there are certain friends who you call for certain things. Okay? Because if I'm thinking about media or I'm thinking about marketing or commercialization, I'll probably call you because that's your subject matter experience. I won't call my buddy Yahim, who is a social labor economist. Okay? But if I'm thinking about wage mobilization and you know, how do I think that impacts, you know, my employees' pension, then I'll call him and we will have that discussion. And so you have friends who cater to different things. And what I would say is that you know yourself, and that's why I'm saying don't let your friends choose you. You know yourself, you know what it is that you need or what it is that you value, and you pick friends based on those value systems. Unfortunately, a lot of young people, and don't confuse this with purely looking at it in terms of leeching off of you. I think a lot of people come into friendship asking themselves, yeah, what can I get out of this? And if there's nothing I can get out of this, I end that particular relationship. I more come into the aspect of it, okay, what can I give into this relationship? I start off that particular question for myself. Am I adding value to Dr. Kingori's life, or am I just, a beating symbol? That's not what anything. And using that perspective, if I'm adding value to your life, more than likely it's a reciprocal relationship. Whether it's mentor-mentee, there is still a reciprocal aspect to it. Yeah.
Yes. So you trade for 2 weeks, make let me use blanket figures, like say $40,000 as profit. That's over 4 million Kenyan shillings, right? That's good money. In fact, per unit time, it's probably more money than like the average money you would make in a day over the course of your career, right? And then you stop and you actually advise people, don't do this unless A, B, C, D, right? Then I tie this to a phrase I associate with Morgan Housel. He's a prolific writer on money matters. He says, this world has people who don't know how to start making money, and this world has people who don't know when to stop making money, right? What do you think of that statement in itself first?
I think there's a lot of factualness or truthness to it. I think and the reason why I would say it was not like, do as I say, but don't do as I do type of aspect to it. There was a caveat, there was a comma to it. Do not do this, comma, unless you have not only the time, but the financial resources, the bandwidth to be able to go deep into these stocks and actually read it. Because I was reading financial statements. Okay? Most people are not reading financial statements before they're trading. I was going in and, so for example, another beyond the stock trading, a lot of the things that I would do would be earning on dividends. So I would go but how do you earn on dividends? I would go in and then look which companies are paying the vast majority of dividends per share. Are they blue chip or not blue chip? And I would put all the blue chip there. How have they fared this financial quarter? When is the last day to buy that so that you can be paid dividends? And I would buy that. So they're doing this every quarter. So a company like Dell, which I bought 2 weeks ago, had their board or their financial statement announcement, a week and a half ago? But in order to be earning dividends from that, you have to have bought roughly about a month and a half ago. So it means you need to do your research. How is Dell performing? Are they meeting their goals? Where do you think that? And you can get all that data by a simple Google research. Figure out, because they're public companies. They publish this data. And then you reconstruct this backwards and saying, okay, should I buy this and should I not buy this? Now, it doesn't mean that you will always hit it 100%. It's like fishing, but you made a pretty good, educated guess that you're going to Dell is going to outperform its earnings. And Dell did outperform its earnings by a significant amount.
I have to write that there. Making money is guesswork. That's a strong guesswork,
word.
Informed, still guesswork. And you know why?
Well, actually, it's maybe not guesswork. It's reducing the likelihood of failure, and that's all you can do.
It's guessing, but a little bit. Okay.
And no, guessing is completely uninformed. Like it's me coming up and saying,
but
where is the ball in this cup?
You see how you're careful with the statement. Informed. Like it's guesswork, but you add let's call it a prefix, informed. In an informed guess. Still guess.
It's still guess.
Because sometimes you may lose.
Sometimes you may lose, Sometimes you may lose. I mean, for example, in this particular case that I gave you, we did lose. So Dell did outperforming its earnings, okay? But the AI projections slowed down. And so even though they had outperformed their earnings for the next quarter, people assumed that there wouldn't be as much Dell sales. And so stock went from 148 to 117 yesterday. Okay. Now, if I had just been buying that to flip, I would, be out like about $3,000-4,000. But now you go on a long-term hold strategy.
That's about. So I'll tie this: how to start making money, when to stop making money, right? You said you do research, and then you make informed. But however informed you are, information, there's a level of money if you don't have, even if you trade, you're wasting time.
Yes. So we're talking about moving percentages.
Yes.
So
moving percentages,
yeah.
That's a thing. What is moving percentages?
So at least, this, let me give another example with Netflix from the last quarter. When Netflix released its earnings, its most recent earnings. There's a ceiling that Netflix will hit in terms of, because there are only so many high-speed internet connections that they are, okay? So, and even if internet connections are unlimited, there's a limited amount of people, okay, who they can sell this to. So eventually, they'll hit the ceiling. For me, as an individual, them hitting the ceiling is not a bad thing. It means that they have attained as much market share as they can. But to a lot of investors, they're like, well, we shouldn't hold this company. Why are we doing it? There's no more growth for it. So it depends on your investment strategy. Now, in terms of Netflix, they had a pretty good last quarter. They have been cracking down on password sharings and everything else. So they have received a lot of revenue. Okay? So if you had bought Netflix the previous quarter, and then on the day after their earnings are released, probably made anywhere from 5 to 7% in one day. So if you had put in 500,000, that's a significant amount. Now, if you're putting in 5,000 Kenya shillings, 5% of 5,000 Kenya shillings is nothing to, do cartwheels about when it comes to stock trading. You'll have to make a lot of trades to do that. So the amount that you're trading also matters. But then, in addition to that, the length of how you're trading also matters. If you're trading 5,000, then you probably shouldn't be day trading. You should be holding, because you want, compounded growth. So you should probably look at that. If I had $5,000 investing in Netflix,
okay,
I would pack it, and then I would probably look at it years down the road. Of course, I'll still be informed. Now, I wouldn't advise anyone, and I keep going back to this, to buy individual stocks if you don't have that comma part, if you know what it is that you're doing, and you have the time and the resources to actually go and read about this. If you're buying individual stocks and you're doing it for about 2 or 3 companies, you can get pretty deep knowledge about that company. That's what we did with Apple. We didn't do the whole entire stock market. We had like 3 or 4 stocks that we knew inside out. You could tell me the price of Apple yesterday, and I could tell you, is that off its average? It's last week's average, it's 30-day moving average, and I would easily tell you, buy, because it's by next week, it's going to be 3, 4, 5%.
Okay.
But that requires a significant amount of depth and analysis to do so that a lot of people don't have the time to. Even I don't have the time to do so anymore.
And the depth is also measured in the depth of your pocket. That's where the moving percentages are coming in.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about the percentage return, it's about the amount.
The amount, yeah. So the larger the amount, smaller percentages. So for example, if you're doing $100,000 US dollars, 1% of 100,000 is $1,000. That's a significant amount.
Yes.
That can take you through for a week. But somebody who had invested that $1,000, 1% of that is only 10 bob. So there's same percentage, but very different.
Same percentage.
Yeah.
So this advice that people get, you can make money, it's only advice for people with access to real money.
So let's move away from this so people don't just think we're talking about stocks.
Yes.
Going back to the way most people see as money works, or at least the advice that would be given from experts, is that the first pool of money is very difficult to make. It requires the sweat of your brow and exchange of hours in order to make that particular money.
The first batch.
Yeah, the first batch.
Okay. And that has been said again on this platform.
Yeah, that requires, there's no way around that.
In fact, just to quote our guest, Dr. Esther Mushemi, said that the first million you have to work for yourself. Yeah. And then the first 10 million, people will help you make it.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, my first million in USD took a very long time to hit. I mean, it took my whole entire lifetime and up to that particular point. This was 2017. But moving from that million to the next million literally took about 18 months, whereas this one took years. Reason being is because there's a compounding effect of money when it's a big sum. Okay, in raw dollar terms, you see that the percentage I'm saying is remaining the same, but because it's a larger pool, let me put it this way: if you could have made the same investments I had, but if you had 1,000 shillings and I had 1,000,000 shillings, and we doubled the money, you now have 2,000 shillings. I have 2,000,000 shillings. Okay. The ability to buy from that extra 1 million is significant because you may need the whole 2,000. Okay, I don't need the whole 2 million. I can take 1.5 of it, leave it investing, and live off the 500.
So is it accurate to say just from that point alone that anyone seeking to make an impact on their financial life should target a figure, their entry figure? Like, let's say, for example, I'm working so hard so that in the next 10 years, I can have 20 million to my name, okay? And this is what I'll use to enter the money game. Is that a strategy to work by? Is that a way into the system? Instead of just working for retirement? Instead of just working to survive?
That's a good question. I mean, even all these examples that I'm giving you, for me, that was working towards retirement, or working maybe in the short term to have more disposable income. But the question, I think, for everyone is that everyone has to answer, and those answers may be different, is that what is the end goal in terms of your financial strategy? What is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to retire at 50? Are you trying to retire at 60? There has to be a goal. Now, for the vast majority of us, the common goal is quote unquote retirement, but that means different things to different people. Okay, if you're a teacher in the Kenyan system, retirement for you probably just means being able to sustain the lifestyle that you had while working as a teacher, and not going deep or regressing backwards. Okay, and it's noble because it's a path forward, but that goal is also predicated on the income that this teacher was earning, because unfortunately, in most countries, including this one, we don't pay our teachers very well, even though they are a very important aspect of society as a whole. So it means that when that teacher is thinking of retirement, it's very different than my friend Wanjigi and how he's thinking of retirement. Okay, because not only the amount, but the value, maybe even quality of lifestyle and everything else. So if you're a pilot, you're thinking of retirement may be very different from the teacher simply because of your income earnings. Okay, but all else being equal, when I mean retirement, for most people, or at least what financial advisors would mean for retirement, is that are you able to maintain at least the same quality of lifestyle that you had when you were employed or when you were earning a living, at the very least? Okay, yes or no? So can you get a better quality of life, at least in your sunset years? And for a great number of people, that's also the goal. And for others, will say, why do I have to wait until the very end to enjoy things? Why can't I do this now? And it's a very good question. But I think one still has to be very careful in terms of using earned resources at a time when they will be very difficult for you to make them up when you're 60. And most young people don't think of it that way. They see themselves as 30, they evaluate their life as being 30, and they think they will have the same grit, the same strength, the same vigor when they're 60. And the reality, it's not true. And so they're like, I can maintain this lifestyle because I'll always be working. But the truth is that you'll always be working. If you're a carpenter, you may start having hands to shake. You may start to lose your eyesight. And these are realities that we all have to deal with, and that's why we plan for retirement.
Okay. You cannot separate the financial incentive or benefit from why we work, right? You have multiple businesses, you've done well for yourself. Waya, as in you quit your job. I've never, okay, I've quit my job too. So up to that level, I relate, but World Bank, oh, you quit. So now, you quit your job,
Sometimes we have to also rethink whether that was a good idea. The jury's out.
That's
Depends on who you ask.
Yeah, that's comforting. So now, you quit your job, you have businesses. Waya is doing fine.
I wouldn't say fine. I think we are okay. We have struggles just like any other business.
Just like any other business.
We're in the middle of fundraising, and we have things that affect us that are outside our control, interest rates being one of them. Which dry up investors, which makes it also difficult for us to pay bills.
So, but I'll give you an example with Waya, right? Let's say, for example, you get a very good offer on Waya, money that you've never even imagined you can get, okay? This is tied to when to stop making money, okay? You get such a good offer that when you calculate, even if you worked for 50 years, you can't get that money. And such opportunities are there, especially in tech, right? Would you continue working after that, assuming you take the offer?
So, for the vast majority of people, work is directly tied to paying their bills. It's difficult for most people, if not impossible, for them to separate that, because if they don't work, they can't pay their rent. If they don't work, they can't pay their school fees. The goal for me, and maybe the goal for other people, was it's not riches, it's rewarding myself with the choice in that now I'm working because I choose to, not necessarily because I need to go to work so that I can pay for this less. Because I'm able to separate that. Now you get into the really passionate aspect, which people don't. I'm doing something that I am deeply passionate about. I also have the expertise in it. And I don't have, I have bosses, yes, still investors. You'll never be your own boss entirely.
I understand. Let me break this example down, Tena Kidogo. You've answered it brilliantly. The reason why you work is different based on the stages that you are. So we'll give it 2 layers. Number 1, the option of work, and number 2, there's an example of something we used to say as a joke in primary school. Someone has a kibanda, and someone with money comes and is like, hey, I feel for this guy, okay? How much can I buy everything here, okay? And let's say, for example, you look at the kibanda, and I'm sure you've seen that. You've seen someone has like a bunch of bananas and they're selling that, and you offer to buy them all at a profit. They will refuse to sell you these bananas because their idea or their programming is they're supposed to sell this between morning to evening, right? So if you came in the morning and offered to buy all the bananas, they would be like, hey, what do you want me to do? Okay? So in this level, let me give you a figure. Someone comes, offers you $1 billion for Waya.
For Waya?
Yes.
Right now?
Yes.
That's a number I would entertain. If they offered 50 million, I wouldn't entertain.
I know. Yeah. But if you get $1 billion, like let's say someone sees the value you see in that company, offers you $1 billion, right? Do you still, do you entertain the option of not working? Do you think this would change your lifestyle in terms of what you do in your life daily? And as you answer that, now let's go to, for the person who lives their life and the work they do is just to pay bills, how can they escape the cycle? Yeah.
So using that analogy, even the reason why I started Waya was not necessarily to make money, or even these other companies that I like for my own personal aspect, was to actually change a problem in society that I experienced, and along with my partners, and we said, hey, we have the capacity and the ability and the willingness and the risk tolerance to change this. And so we're going to do it. And so we were slightly different from other startups, is that we were able to at least fund ourselves up to a particularly certain point where we had the proof of concept, and then now go to others. And the reason why we're doing that is because we really wanted and want to be change makers when it comes to financial inclusion for underserved communities. And gets back to that particular aspect in terms of leveling the playing field, in that, yes, people may not have complete control of the economy, but they have untoward influence towards it. And as a result, the people who suffer are the ones usually at the bottom. And so if we can do something about that, we can, and we will. That's why I was working for the World Bank. That's why I was in development. For me, development was a passion and something that I'm deeply attuned to it. So if somebody was to give me $1 billion to sell Waya, I would say, oh yeah, I would immediately take it, because I could create 10, 15 more Wayas from that, and go to Colombia, Peru, Kenya, Rwanda, and actually set up those structures there. 2, I wouldn't have to fundraise anymore, because if you give me $1 billion, I would just invest it and live off the endowment and do what it is that I want to do, in terms of what I'm deeply passionate about, which is changing lives. Now, how can others get to
outside the system of, I think I'll call it slavery. Like, you have to work, because if you don't,
yeah, well, St. Paul says if you don't work, but I guess it also, yeah, there are people, and it's a vast majority of people, who have no choice whatsoever but to work. I used to also be in that situation. I'm sure you remember a time when you used to be in that situation where entire choice is rid of you. In that, hata ukisikia hautaamka utaki kwenda kazi leo, not because you just don't want to, but because you're sick, incapable of doing so, but because you know if you stay in bed, you're going to have issues at the end of the month when it comes to that particular
your financial responsibilities.
That's a really difficult place to be in, and I remember those places. And for a lot of people, it's unfortunate that they may not be able to get out of that cycle of poverty for a variety of reasons. One, it is difficult for them to attain disposable income that they can invest, so that all their money is not just going to bills.
Okay.
And that's in a large aspect, at least for development. That's why some avenues of social safety nets are there. I mean, in this day and age, it is sad that being ill can really take you on a completely different trajectory in terms of abject poverty in day of modern medicine, or where you are born or who you were born to has an influence on your attainment in terms of earning capacity, because you're denied of education systems and structures. That's why institutions matter. That's why people should, with their ability, as the Bible said, do not tell your neighbor to come back tomorrow when you have it today. People with their ability should work towards at least leveling out the playing field, at the very least in terms of health and education access and financial access. And hopefully we can break some of these cycles. Now, removing the people who are on the really abject poverty scale, and I'm very not able to get out of that strain, and then put people like us, people who some of the problems that we have financially are out of ignorance, our own doing, or just frivolous spending. And for a lot of millennials, particularly middle class, that's the reality, is that we spend money that we don't have, or we spend and live outside our means. And some of the problems that we have when it comes to rent are because, not because we are not paid enough, it's just we didn't budget accordingly.
Spend money that we don't have.
Yeah.
Debt.
Yeah, that would be debt, yeah.
Debt. There's what
salary advance.
There's what being floated around.
Yeah.
Good debt, bad debt. Debt is generally money that you don't have.
Debt is money that you don't have, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how is so are you saying that one can exist outside the system of debt?
Yeah, you can exist outside the system of debt
and create wealth.
And create wealth. But there will have to be a number of things that would have to go right. One, either you are born into a very wealthy family, and you have old money, and it's easy to replicate old money if you do it accordingly. Or you are earning a remarkably high salary, and you're able to buy cash for everything. Now, there are people like that. We know a lot of people like that because debt is not really available in Kenya, at least at a favorable rate. So most people who are spending these particular ones are spending cash. Now, can you earn a comfortable living, and can you, get wealthy or comfortable, or even to use the word rich, without ever getting into debt? Yes. It depends on your investment strategy and what you do with those funds and how you do them. And also, it's very important to also point the caveat, it also depends on how much money you're earning or whether you just got lucky as well.
There's a word umerusha hapo which I feel is very important when it comes to a journey to create wealth. Being, okay, our friend Ed says there's nothing like financially free. Disposable income. What's the greatest enemy of disposable income?
A lack of budgeting is what I would say. You see, the reason why budgeting is so important, it's not simply because you're writing down what it is that you need to spend. Unfortunately, as human beings, part of our nature is the inability, unfortunately, to look into the future and plan for it accordingly, because no one ever thinks they're getting old. Or, even if you think of yourself, like, I went and I was working out yesterday and I was like, man, I'm really, really sore. I used to not be so sore. Why am I so sore? It's like, maybe I lifted too many weights. It could be really, I'm growing older. And my muscles are just saying, hey, dude, we're not in our 20s anymore. But we have that inability to plan towards that until it's too late. Even for the people who are intellectuals or have the educational attainment or are smart or knowledgeable, whatever word you want to use. It's not just that, poor people who have difficult aspect when it comes to retirement or lack of planning. It's even people with the means. And that's actually the really sad part, is because people with the means getting into this particular types of problems from poor planning is really sad, because these are avoidable situations. So disposable income, going back to that, it's money. I don't want to use the word disposable to define it as well, but it's, you've paid your rent, you've paid your school fees, you've paid all the bills that you need to pay, but yet you have money left over that doesn't have a bucket to go to. That's, in layman's term, a definition of disposable income.
I'll give you a profile of someone. One of our team members, Tony, said something very, it was too strong. I want you to profile him. I would like you to profile him. Tony was saying the value. Tony,
will I meet him again? Because he's on
the team. He's on the team actually. He is listening to this part.
Okay.
Tony Roland. Tony says he was breaking down the value of 1,000 to us. He says 1,000 is
shillings
a lot,
or dollars?
1,000 shillings.
Okay.
He says it's a lot of money if you umeshiba, like you don't feel hungry. You already sent your girlfriend transport, and you've paid rent, and you have 1,000 shillings. It's a lot of money. He says it's I don't think I have words to describe how much he says 1,000 bob is after you paid everything. Okay? But he says 1,000 shillings can also be 10 bob if all these factors are against you. You're supposed to send fare, you have not eaten, you have not paid rent. It is useless for someone to give you 1,000 shillings. Yeah. This is the same amount of money versus different circumstances. So this is 1,000 bob to be budgeted, and this is also a context of 1,000 bob as disposable income, right? So for the mindset, of course, he was saying this in jest. It was on a light note, but when you go into the mindset of someone, like most Kenyans, they are like, nimeshalipa rent, I've paid nini, so I have some leftovers. And then you're like, so what can I do with this money, right? What is your profile of someone who thinks like this?
Kama, the money is just scratching, waiting
Yes,
to be
yes,
used.
yes.
I would be maybe slightly cautious because money doesn't necessarily need a use case. It can be there. And actually that's what most people would prefer, is to have money and not necessarily have a use for it.
Just have money, but you don't need it.
Yeah, you don't need it. You don't need it because at least your needs are met by other aspects of money. And at least for me, I try to get into those situations a lot, because anytime I get into that particular situation, I pack that money into an appreciating asset of some sort. Just be like, okay, badala ikusumbue, just put it out of sight, because it's going to grow. And then you can have that discussion when you've turned that 1,000 to 10,000, and they're like, okay, now what do we do? And probably you'll end up to the same conclusion. Let me just put it back.
Okay.
And that's how you compound your wealth, you compound your investments, you compound your retirements. And eventually you sit long enough, you'll find a use for it. Usually a use outside yourself in terms of altruism.
Compounding. You mentioned the word compounding a lot. The mathematics of compounding has been described, I think, as a wonder of the world. I don't know which wonder, the eighth wonder or whatever, right? So compounding, you say, in the most layman's terms, because in one of the episodes you featured, you said after 6 years, your money starts to double. After 6 years.
More or less. But yes, you can use that assumption, yeah.
So this means that, let's say I have 1 million Kenya shillings, right? Then I save it in a vehicle that supports compounding, right? And then after 6 years, let's say, for example, it becomes 7 million or 8 million or 9 million plus compound interest. Let's give it 9 million from compound interest total in the sixth year, okay? So are you saying that from the seventh year, the whole amount doubles? If I have 9 million in the sixth year, in the seventh year it becomes 18 million. In the other year it becomes 36 million, 72 million, like that.
Yeah. Now, there are a lot of caveats to that. One, it assumes what interest rate. So say an interest rate between 6 and 10%. But not just money umeweka and then you're just leaving it, okay? There is an additive aspect. The other side of the compound interest is also the fact that you're saving.
Or
okay?
It's not like you can store the money now.
Well,
let your money, sit down and let your money work for you.
Technically, you can if it's a big chunk, okay? So let's say you want to retire with $1 million. At the current exchange rate would be roughly 129 million, okay? You're not going to take 500,000 Kenya shillings and then pack it there and then magically it's going to wake up and be 128 million, you know? Eventually, yes, if you give it enough amount of years, there's going to be some contribution tied to it. So that contribution is actually very meager the earlier you start. If you're 20, when you start this, you'll hit this easily by your 40s or 50s, depending on the interest. If you're in your teens and your parents do this for you, if you're 0 and your parents do this for you, by the time you're 18 and going to school, you could be a millionaire if they're middle class and they're putting this money in. So
would you advocate for that? Like you save money for your child and then boom, when they're 18, they have $1 million. When they're 20, they have $1 million.
Yeah, but I wouldn't give it to them because it wouldn't be $1 million for very long.
Exactly.
Right? So, but you're doing it for their future self. So yes, that's how you would pay for their college. That's how you would pay for a lot of things. It will also save you, forget the child, it will also save you a lot of headache when it comes to tuitions at college.
What's more valuable? Like saving the $1 million for them with a target of 20 years or deliberately training them to know how to make their own million like you did?
No. Because even for me, making my own million, it's not like I started from 0. My parents had a lot to do with getting me to that aspect in terms of what they poured it in. And resources are not just financial. There was a lot of social capital that went into me. There's a lot of human capital that went into it. It's not just the financial capital that got me there. So they were able to do what they did within their means. And it projected, you can see the generational change from my grandfather, Wakamefika Standard 6, to my father, to myself, and hopefully to my offspring.
Break it down for us. Like, what's the mapping of wealth transfer from your grandfather moving to Mali Umefika?
I mean, it's tripling, maybe quadrupling. So if you take a look at my grandfather's average income, and then by the time he passed the baton to my father, and his average income at the starting point also had very difficult, because we came from this very poverty-stricken family, like most people. But education for us was a great equalizer.
When you say it like that, it seems like you have tripled the poverty. Like when you say your grandfather was abject poverty, he passes the baton.
No, passes the baton of life and what he has earned to this particular one. And so you just take it in, you build. And kama kujenga skyscraper, you're building generational wealth. And that's one of the main differences between, you see, I don't know how to put this, but the goal, let's use us as the Wachira family.
Yes.
The goal.
Yes,
we have one goal that unites us all,
okay.
At least for us. And it was passed on from my grandfather to my father to us, and we've all adopted that. Okay?
Yes.
None of us, as long as we are capable, will have to worry about school. That has been the goal for every single generation, to where you get to the point where school fees become a non-starter. That was very difficult for my father.
Yes.
When my grandfather was educating him.
Yes.
It was still very difficult for my father and my mother when they were educating us. But by the time it got to my younger sister, that was a moot point, because people did not have to work so hard to pay for school fees.
Yes.
Okay. And that's with just the last born out of the family of three. When it comes to my offspring, my sister's offspring, I don't think any of us would think twice about school fees. It's definitely not something that I would, it doesn't matter the university, pick any, globally. Okay? I don't think anyone in my family would worry about paying school fees at Harvard in cash or at Nairobi or Maseno or anywhere else. So that has become an aspect now at the family level. Now, what are we doing for the next generation is setting up a trust fund that every single Wachira or anyone comes from us, from the time you're born to the time you finish, at least school-wise, hakuna mtu anasema ni shida ya school fees ambayo imefanya tusikasome. Okay? Labda ni zingine, but it won't be money. And you start eliminating these problems within your capacity, and each particular person picks out a generation. Living hand to mouth or living in significant aspect of debt has become less and less and less of an issue. But it takes a lot of, not just the compounding in terms of raw dollar interest terms, but also the compounding of knowledge. So
does this mean
you pass it forward?
Does this mean that when you plan for financial freedom, as in when you're drawing your wealth map, chances are you're not looking at yourself, as in you're not looking at the individual, like I want to live at a certain place, I want to live like this is the life I want. If, let's say, for example, if what I'm getting is, if let's say my goal is to have a nice car, a nice house, right? Chances are your lifestyle ends with you. The next generation that comes after you will sort themselves.
Yeah. So you see that begets a lot of some of these problems that we see when you just think of it inwardly. Okay? Because you're not going to take the wealth to your grave. It's completely useless to you when you're gone. Okay? My apartments, my houses in DC wouldn't matter to me 40 years or 80 years. Hopefully I wouldn't live 80 years, but 40 or 50 years down the road when I'm in a coffin, it wouldn't matter to me. But it will matter to the significant offspring or the generation that you leave behind. So the best thing you can do is leave them, if it's in your capability, and a lot of people don't have this, a sure foothold. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that they will be Bill Gates. That's not the goal. The goal is, can we
A place to start.
a stepping stone, and then see how far we can say that. But now, in order to do that, there has to be a significant aspect of preservation, because even the richest families haven't been able to do this. The Carnegies, the Rockefellers, within 60 years, people have changed their name. Anderson Cooper was a Carnegie, but you don't see him using the Carnegie last name. It's, the wealth of 80 years has completely gone. These were the richest people in the world. If there is not a steward, and that's maybe the word I would use, is that we look ourselves, not just in society, but also in our family, as stewards of what we've been given to us. Not ours alone. My job is to get it to the next generation better than it was given to me. And then they carry it forward that way.
Okay. Then what's your submission on the true, there's a lot of talk, and we actually have done 2 strong, powerful episodes on this, a spiritual aspect of money. Do you think there's a spiritual aspect to poverty and wealth? Or creating wealth is purely about working hard, connections and strategies?
Well, yes and no. One, I'm a believer, so I'm a Christian, but I wouldn't go as far. I don't try to put divine influence on everything. I think for a lot of things, God has given us the capacity and, dare say, the free will to be able to make choices. It doesn't mean that we necessarily make the choices that are best for us. Do I think money can have an untoward influence on people? Yes, especially if it's a single driving factor. It can be idolatrous or whatever word you want to use. You can be a miser, you can be, and I think, and not just with money, with things, with anything else, that unreasonable affection for money can also be a problem.
Affection is a strong word, but
because, I mean, money does solve a lot of things, but it's not the panacea to your individual problems. Can it lead to depression? Can it lead to, financial problems will definitely lead you to a depressive state. But I think for a lot of people, that is not the problem that they have with money. I think for a lot of people, the average person, the problem that they have with money is that they're not able to budget reasonably well or plan their money well.
But we have agreed that there's a certain level of money, however hard you budget, you're wasting time.
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
Eat that money.
I wouldn't say that. Look, there for some people, you still have to budget because, okay, let's use an extreme case. Okay. You still have to budget because you can't say that, this 1,000 kwa sababu haitatosha chakula, I go and buy a car with it. I mean, that would be stupid, right? I mean, of course, one, you wouldn't be able to buy a car for 1,000, but let's just make the assumption if pick something else.
I've seen. I think let me just give him credit. Paulo Kimani. Once I saw a tweet attributed to him, very funny. He said he was budgeting for 1 million shillings, something of the sort, and this 1 million shillings he would maximize it. Like, let's say, for example, he did. I don't remember the math, but I remember specifically. He said that he will move into Lavington for 6 months. You do realize you can afford to move into Lavington for 6 months. 6 months. But it will be the 6 months, it will be an experience of your lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, when I spend money, at least for myself, at least my MO, maybe you find your own, but for me, I like buying experiences, memorable experiences. Especially if I'm going to spend money, I like very tangible things that I will remember. I prefer not to use money for things that I can't attribute to. And I've sat with people and advised them. I was like, okay, hey, you spend $3,000 last month. Can you point to something tangible? And if you're having a hard time pointing to something tangible, then you're probably not spending your money accordingly.
The right way.
I would rather you say, yeah, I spent $2,000, man, I took this trip to Greece and Athens and Sicily, and it was just majestic, and I'll remember it for the rest of my life. At least I'll say, okay, maybe you shouldn't have taken the trip. You should have probably, thought about how you're going to pay your school fees, but at least we're getting somewhere. It's a memorable experience, and then it's easy to start correcting that. And to that person, I say, you want more memorable experiences? Well, reward yourself by finishing school. Then you can buy. So, for me, I went I spent 11 years in university. Back. Bachelor's, master's, PhD, Nikamaliza. A lot of my friends would ask me, why aren't you taking a gap year? Why don't you take a year or two and come back? I said, I can go 11 straight and I can take all the years that I want and never have to worry about school. So when you're taking one and then, me, I'm done. And since I was 27, I'm done. I never think about school again, never have to consider that again. So that part is chapter. So for me, it was a reward to myself. I can either take one, deferred gratification. That's actually how interest became. The interest started in Mesopotamia and in other aspects by people who would defy their immediate gratification, and society would reward them with interest payments in the future. And then that's how the concept of interest and money came to be. So it's the ability to spend the money now, but choosing not to, for something in the future that is better. It goes against the English proverb about a bad hand is worth two in the bush.
Now, so just to be clear before we move on, it's your submission that you don't tie divinity to the making of wealth or access
that's where
to
we were with
resources.
the question.
Yes.
You have to rein me back in.
No, it's okay.
We don't tie. Go back. We don't tie what?
You don't tie divinity to access to resources.
No, I wouldn't say that. Do I think people? You mean in terms of like being rich and wealthy? Do I think there is?
Let me simplify it.
Yeah.
You don't believe in witchcraft.
No, I don't believe in witchcraft. I don't believe in.
You
witchcraft.
don't believe it works.
Witchcraft?
Someone is poor because they've been bewitched.
No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that whatsoever. I think, as Jesus said, the poor will always be with you. There are some people who, including myself and others, who just out of nothing of their own are born to a poor family. I mean, we can't say that particular infant has been bewitched and it's something that they did in previous life or afterlife or whatever nonsense we want to attribute that to. I just think it's the lottery of life, and those of us with the capabilities to change that lottery should. Now, do I think helping out has an avenue of blessings to it, but can you get rich from giving? I mean, these are very philosophical questions. I think, depending on how you define richness. Are we defining richness in terms of money or the value systems that I feel good about making a difference in someone else's life?
Where do you think it leans to?
For me, feel good about making a difference in someone else's life. I don't think that God is going to give me $1 million simply because I gave you 100,000 and sowing a seed towards $1 million. I wouldn't go as far to that extreme. At least when it comes to my faith, other people may feel very differently. But for me, I don't think you can pay your way divinely into riches. I mean, otherwise the Bible wouldn't say it's very hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Right. Okay, you go to church, right?
Yes.
Do you give?
Yes.
Why do you give? What is your motivation?
One, going back to what I said, from a sense of duty, because I have the ability to make a difference in someone else's life, and as a result, I will.
You don't give for blessings,
Actually, no.
You don't invest in blessings?
No, I don't.
Because you can't measure the return?
give, and you give. I mean, I'm not reading the.
No,
the,
you're just
the,
reading the first part.
The first part.
Give
Give
and
and it will be given to you.
Yes.
Good measure, press down, shake it over,
Yes.
and run it over. Yes, I mean, is that what would we call? Is that personally? Just me personally, personal opinion, because I don't want to be kicked out of the church. I personally have a problem with people who give simply so that it can be given to them. In fact, Jesus in another verse says, what good is it if you just do good to those who do good to you? I mean, what's the blessing in that?
Okay.
I mean, if you're going to do good, personally, for me, I like doing good. And if I'm going to do good to you, I mean, on the friendship part, we may know, but I like doing good to strangers, and I like doing good to people who will never find out that I'm the one who did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before we let you go, one final thing, debt. Okay. Our friend Ed Diongo says debt is here to stay. So you have to find a way to survive in the system. We have people who have subscribed to strategies looking for ways to get out of debt, right? You just want out. You want freedom, okay?
Or for like me, looking for ways to get into debt.
Oh, really?
So it depends. I think it depends on where you are.
It depends on where you are.
We can get into that, but I'll let you finish your question.
In fact, I think you've picked it very nicely. You're not scared of debt.
No, I'm not scared of debt. Actually, for me, and for multiple others, I would not be, whatever word you want to use, wealthy or rich or comfortable, if it wasn't for debt. Okay, now I understand that not everybody has access to the debt capital that I've had, but I have used it to leverage my wealth creation, and that's why I am here. That's how Waya is. That's how we've gotten to where we are. There would be no investment in Waya if me and my co-founders did not have access to debt.
I'll ask a very basic question, right? Very basic. In my simple-mindedness, the accepted average return on investment long term is 10%. Uruke juu rudi chini. Average between 8 to 12% annually.
Annually.
Average, like compounded. Sometimes you may get 30%, sometimes, but at the end of the day, you settle back between 8 to 12%. Access to debt, except for mortgage, which I believe the US has very good deals of 3 to 6%, right? In Kenya, 9 is the best deal I've had, okay? Going all the way to 22%, right? Help me understand how you would borrow at 15%, right? For a return of 10% and still make money.
Well, you wouldn't in that particular example. You wouldn't. But why would you be borrowing at a rate of 15% for a return of 10%? Who would do that?
That's what everybody is borrowing against, actually. The interest rates are as high as 22%.
Yes, but it also depends on what you're doing with that money. I was going to use a stronger term. What the heck you're doing with that money.
Still, in fact, I think most Kenyans are bankers. You work for the bank. Because at the end of the day, when you do the averages, you still, the house, the house always wins. And everybody is borrowing with the interest rates that have been stipulated. I don't think Kenyan banks, they will just lend to the government if you want to negotiate interest.
Okay. So we also, let's break it down let's get deeper into the aspect of debt, and we'll get to the good debt and bad debt. But even before we get to that, debt as an instrument to get rich as an end goal, it's probably not what I wouldn't say I'm getting into debt so I can become rich. Okay. However, you can get into debt to make an investment. That investment has to be predicated on the return, so you can figure out whether the debt that you're taking is worth the return on investment. So if I'm taking debt at 15% per annum, at the very least, whatever it is I'm investing in needs to be above 15. Okay? At least equal 15 and a half, anything above that, then at least you have a break-even aspect, and preferably a little bit higher. Now, for most people, they don't make those calculations. Now, there will be certain instances where the return may not be as high, but also because the intangible benefits to that particular person outweigh the interest. Let me put it as an example. If you're buying a house, for you, in your family, and your own self-gratification up and ndipo you will stay. It's not an investment. You're not doing this so that you can rent it out. You're doing this because this is where we see ourselves for 20, 30 years. Then probably you can get those interest rates because the intangible benefits in return are much higher. Now, in Kenya, even though you get a 30-year mortgage or a 15-year mortgage, I definitely would not keep a 30 or 15-year mortgage at those particular interest rates, because the value of the item that I was buying would be dead on arrival. By the time I finished, I would have paid, something that was 5 million at 23% interest. By the time I'm done, 30 years down the road, I've paid, in the hundreds. And it's not like I would be able to flip that house and sell it for the amount of cash that I paid in. Now, however, if the house is paid off and the next future generation doesn't have to worry about that, that is, an intangible benefit to that particular family. For us, it is, because we are buying assets that are generational, not individual. At the same time, if I want to get a mortgage in Kenya, and the only way I can get into that particular house is through a mortgage, I'll ask myself two very important questions. One, am I using this mortgage to get something that I cannot afford or should not be in? And I'm only getting into this house simply because the mortgage is available. So I'm buying a 5-bedroom house when really a 3-bedroom will do. But because I'm keeping up with the Joneses, I want to take a Kukua Lavington or whatever it is that I'm doing, that's why I'm doing that. And people have to be really honest with themselves. So that's on the individual side. But then there is on the market side. Yeah, interest rates, and I'll speak directly to the government or to the central bankers, should not be at this level because they stifle development and they stifle economic activity, because you cannot develop yourself out of poverty at this particular interest rate. So no family is able to build generational wealth. In most developed countries, the biggest asset that people own is their home. And that's why governments the world over work very hard to make it possible for that person to get into that home. Because when they get into that home, now they have collateral that they can utilize for other things, borrow against it, for whatever it is that they want to do. And it's a way of packing your money, because the house is an appreciating asset. And this gets back to the last part where I wanted to say there is good debt and there is bad debt. And the line that divides the two, for good debt, it's an appreciating asset. For bad debt, it's a depreciating asset. So what's a depreciating asset? If I'm buying coffee with debt or tea with debt, that is definitely a poor use of debt, because I won't be able to trade that coffee for something more valuable relative to what I paid. But if I'm buying something that has an appreciating value, that even in the future, this thing will have grown and I can service my debt and actually get some collateral out of it or get some equity out of it, then that's a good example of good debt. And then lastly, I went to I&M yesterday and they asked me why I'm here. And I said, well, why would I use my own money when I can use yours? That's why I'm here. Whether it is 15 days, 30 days, whatever it is. Now, if you're getting a 30-day loan for 7%, probably not a good idea. However, if it's because you have an invoice that is paying you 15% and you're able to salvage that, that's 7% you didn't have in return on investment. So that's how you have to look at it. So for the average person, I definitely would not encourage you to get, an overdraft of that type of debt. It's just way too high. However, the reason why I was at I&M yesterday, I said, I need to get a Kenyan credit card. Why do I want to get a Kenyan credit card? Because all my credit cards are US based and I'm spending a lot of time in Kenya, so I want to swipe with a Kenyan credit card. Now, at I&M, the credit card is you have 50 days to make that particular payment interest free, and then after that, you have to make at least 20%, okay? And then on the remaining 80%, you pay 3.5 or 3% per annum, 36% interest. That's remarkably pretty high. Now, I'm not planning on rolling over that debt. I'm planning on, you gave me 50 days, I will pay you on day 49. Why? Because that's 49 days that I did not have to use my own money. Okay? And in that 49 days, I can do something with that money. At the very least, it can be packed in a savings account. Okay? And it accrues a meager level of interest, even if it's at 6%. And then it is money that I was going to spend anyway. But because you have given me a moratorium of this number of days before I need to pay it, I will squeeze every single worth out of that shilling before I give it back to you.
The question is, like, let's say you have a credit card for 3 million shillings, okay?
Yeah,
And you want to pay it, yes?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want to pay it back by day 49, right? This is assuming that you want to invest this money, so hata ikue ikikupatia 100k or 200k over the period, you've not lost anything. So in this case, you have your 3 million bob separate, as in money you can access yours.
Yeah.
But you prefer to borrow this,
Yeah.
to use this, and then earn an interest on top.
Yeah.
But what investment are you doing in Kenya?
No, I'm not
with a
doing any.
credit
I'm
card?
not doing any investment with a credit card. Okay, that for me is purely cash flow management. Okay, so it goes back to the particular question: is that anytime you can spend someone else's money for free, spend someone else's money. Okay, and then pay them back at the time that they said to pay them back in a credit card. There's no interest. So let me use that very candid example. I buy everything with a credit card. Okay, I don't use, even when I use M-Pesa or whatever, at least on the US side, I can't. Now, I will only use M-Pesa when I can't physically swipe my card. A place on Waya PDQ. Okay, why? Two main reasons. The first one is there are significant amount of benefits to having that credit card. Okay, that are valuable to me. It could be lounge access, it could be payment protection, it could be, actually payment protection for me is a very big one. It could be the insurance on goods that I buy with a credit card. I mean, I broke my phone the other day and my laptop. It fell from but because I had bought that laptop with the credit card, there was a theft or loss guarantee, including from damage. So it was a $700 laptop, but I got it replaced for $100, which was a deductible for the claim. And I could at least do that once a year. So that's why I use the credit card. The other part of it on the credit card is like, I'm buying things that I would already be buying. Okay, si chai nitakunywa na nitalipa na M-Pesa. Why nilipa na M-Pesa when I can pay with the credit card? It means that 2 shillings stays in my bank until day 49. And because my bank is paying me at least better than zero interest, then I wait until this particular end to pay the bank. So maybe let me put it in real terms. Last year, 2023, all my flights, this hopping around that you're seeing me do, was done from the cash rewards of the interest that I earned from the money that I delayed paying the bank for. Because you take your money, you already know what your expenditures are. So unalipa nyumba, unalipa all this other stuff, okay? You're already gonna spend that money, okay? Why spend it for free? If someone is telling you, I can give you 6% per annum on your money, so I just take that money, pack it, okay? Swipe with the debit card, with the credit card, because if I had been using that money, it would be going in as I'm spending, Sindio, okay? But if I'm delaying everyone by 50 days, or you can calculate that, okay? So that's what, roughly 6%, that would be 0.5% per month, okay? Rounded up to 2 months. So that's 1% earnings that I'm getting that you're not, simply because you are. Now, that 1% adds up. Over the course of a lifetime, it pays for my flights. And then there's the rewards on the credit card and the cashback aspect. And then there are multiple different things, at least for me now. It requires a great deal of, rigidity. You need to clear your balance. But then also it gives you cash flow. It allows me to borrow from myself. I'm not borrowing from the bank. It just spreads my ability to pay. So I distribute my expenditures, especially if they're going to be big expenditures. I'm able to distribute them over time. So if I'm buying a car, for example, I bought my last car on the credit card, and I was able to, yes, I had the money, you could have bought cash, right? But I spread that 3 million Kenya shillings over 30 days inilete interest. Si mwenye gari nimeshamlipa na tukamalizana. Then
So,
the bank,
so you pay them. Okay.
yeah,
Naelewa.
so you get it. You're selling me the car, I pay you. You have been paid by the bank with the credit card. You're done. And then I need to pay the bank 60 days later or 50 days later. That 3 million is parked in the bank, accruing interest until the day that I pay them back. So for the 3 million that I was already going to spend anyway, at least I got 1% of that 3 million. So nimelipa 3 million and nikabaki that 1%. And that's how that's 30,000 Kenya shillings. Why would I?
You paid,
yeah.
Yes, you paid 3 million on a credit card, okay? And imefika day 49, okay? You've accrued interest. So now are you, to pay back the bank, so are you now going back to the 3 million that you have saved to pay the bank with?
Yes, I use that 3 million. So see, I have it on a high yield savings or high yield, whatever, right? See, after I remove the 3, see, remember when I put it in, let's just, for simple aspect, it was 3 million. I knew on day one that I have 3 million to pay the car with. I took that 3 million, I put it in the account, or I had saved. You wake up for account on day one. And let's just assume that 3 million over 2 months is going to bring me 0.5% per month. So that's 1%, okay? So nimekulipa mwenye gari. Okay, I've charged on the credit card. Okay, I wait until the statement period comes in on the very last day that I need to pay, as long as I pay it. So now that 3 million that had been sitting as a bank is now 3,030,000. I pay the bank the 3 million. I'm left with the 30K for doing nothing but just keeping the money. Now imagine all the transactions you make in your lifetime, and someone giving you 1 or 1.5% of it. That's a significant amount.
So if you do such transactions in a month, you close the year
that's a
with
third of my
almost
rent.
400,000.
You know, yeah. So and that's just one way of getting the system to work for you. And that's where you're going back to your very first question. So we can wrap it up. I think it's a good place to go to is that we're talking about the system being rigged. It's not that the system is rigged. Is that the people, unfortunately, with the means, know how to utilize the system to squeeze money out of it. So Elon Musk is a billionaire. We know he's a billionaire, okay? He didn't buy Twitter with money that he had. He didn't have the cash. We know he didn't have the cash because there was a lawsuit and he tried to get out of it. He didn't, okay? But how did he get the cash? He doesn't take the money that he has, which is in Tesla shares, and actually sells it, okay? He borrows against those shares. And now, why is it important to do that? At least for Elon Musk, let's just use that example. One, he's able to buy an asset, okay, without using his own particular money. Two, it's a loan. And so what happens on a loan when it comes to taxes? You're not taxed on the, 40 billion that if he had withdrawn to, if he had gone and sold his Tesla shares, he would have paid capital gains on 40 billion. But if I go to the bank and I borrow 40 billion, I'm not going to pay capital gains on it. So he saves roughly 12% or 12.5%, okay, that you and I would have gone in, withdrawn the money, so we make the purchase, and then you pay your capital gains, and then you're like, but now he saves, and 12% of 40 billion is a lot of money. Okay? In fact, the savings of that is what the interest that he's going to pay, because the interest is less than the tax that he would be paying. Because the interest that he was getting is definitely not 12%, maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe even less. So for him, it's a pure business decision. I'm making 6% gains here.
I've heard a lot of good things about I&M, but now I'm tempted to go check out their deal.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things. Naisikianga tu hapa I&M. Now
maybe I should tell them to make me their influencer.
They should.
If they're listening.
I'm tempted. I'm very, very tempted. I'll go check out their deal, see what that's about. Doc, najua, if I ask something else, we're going to, and there's a question that was
go ahead.
asked on behalf.
Go ahead.
Just one. You appeared on Eric Okabe's channel and explained a strategy to have insurance, to insure your vehicle from outside the country and it's fully insured na kila kitu and I want a judgment at how old the car is and nini. Please tell us what this is about. This is a question that I was specifically asked to ask you to explain again.
Yeah. So yeah, you can check out that show that we did with Eric. I think it's
on autocorrect.
Autocorrect, yeah.
Yes.
So it was on the build of my Defender. After I built my Defender, then it was ready, to drive. One of the biggest problems I had before I got it from John, who was my mechanic who built it, was I needed to insure it, because that's what you should do to make your car roadworthy in Kenya and also in any other country. The problem I had was when I started calling insurance companies, they would ask, what year is the car? And I would say 1993. And the answer I got was, well, unfortunately, we don't insure cars that are over 80 years old, at least comprehensive, because that's what I wanted to insure my car comprehensive. I had spent a lot of money, time and effort building the car. I wanted it to be comprehensive covered, not that party covered at whatever value that they were getting. So you get a car for, $4.5 million, and then you're insuring it that party at and the sana 450K. You get in an accident, you're out 4 million Kenya shillings. That was just an unacceptable risk. So I called around and I realized this is very difficult. So I decided to seek insurance outside the country. And I was very fortunate because prior to this, in 2018 and 2019, I had lived in Zimbabwe and I was insured with Old Mutual to South Africa. So I called my insurance and I said, hey, I know I got my commercial insurance from you last time, but can you cover a car that is insured outside the country? And we said, yeah, we just need to make sure it's added to our territorial limits. So they send me the territorial limits and it has, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and I said, well, can you add Kenya? And they added Kenya to it, and I said, give me the policy, and then they insured it based on the value that I told them, and that's how I got my insurance. So it's insured, outside. Now, most people may not have that capacity or maybe that familiarity, but it definitely can be done. My other challenge to the insurance companies or even tech founders out there who are in insurtech is to find a way to underwrite this liability, because there are a lot of people who want to either drive classic cars or insure their cars that are older than 8 years. It can't be that we will only insure cars that are 8 years or less for a variety of reasons. One, environmentally, okay, because it means that people will dispose cars that are otherwise good, but they're disposing them simply because they're uninsurable. But if a car is roadworthy, perfect and in good condition, well maintained, why penalize the owner for taking good care of the car by saying you won't insure him? And I think that will be my challenge to the insurance industry. Let us start to underwrite policies that are a little bit older.
And how expensive is it?
It's not, at least for me. I think I pay
in percentage
total,
in Kenya.
So in
percentage, it's 3.5, 4% of the total cost of the car to insure comprehensive. So what's your percentage?
Yeah, mine is in Zim it's 4%, and then because I go through the broker adds 1%, so it's 5% of the value that you tell them. Of course, within reasonable aspects. So you can't say, okay, well, you can be, if you want to insure your car for 100,000 and you're willing to pay the policy, they will let you do so. But of course, you do it within the means. So for me, it ends up coming up. I took a policy of 25,000. So I'm paying 5% of that, and I can drop it to if I wanted to. And then the other thing is that replacement costs, at least repair costs in Kenya, because of the labor costs, are generally cheaper. So it's another thing that you had. At first I was insuring it at 25,000. Then I realized actually there's no reason in insuring it at 25,000. I can drop it to 20 or even 15 because
15 is like
15,000
2 million Kenya shillings. You insure a 4 million bob car for 2 million shillings. 2 million because
shillings.
If anything happens, you can be able to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. So there's a risk in that if a total write-off, then then I'm I'm out. But unlikely that for it unlikely for it to be a total this is the educated guess part, unlikely for it to be a total write-off. But then over the length of the time that you're holding the insurance, by the time you're paying for this particular thing, then you say to yourself, okay, what is probably going to happen is damage of average of this particular amount. So I know my 2 million policy will cover, at least for a defender, a total write-off of 2 million. The car would have to be completely, the chassis will have to be, shredded for you not to do anything with it. Now, other cars, you may need to keep it a little bit more because they're hard to repair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Asante sana, Dr. Wachira. I think we'll close it at that. Thank you for sharing the valuable information with us. Asante sana to the team that made this possible, and again to our audience for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.